As dawn broke on the fourth day, a palpable tension hung in the air. Johann gathered the cadets, his face etched with a mix of determination and desperation.
"We are venturing deep into the expanse today,"
he announced, his voice low and serious.
"Beyond the known borders."
A collective gasp rippled through the group. They all knew what that meant. It was a foolish, extremely dangerous move. The chances of return were slim, but as Johann grimly reminded them,
"They are still higher than our chances of returning home without meeting the quota."
With heavy hearts and racing minds, the cadets followed Johann into the uncharted depths of the expanse. Hours passed as they trudged through the landscape that grew increasingly alien. But what struck them most was the eerie emptiness. Gone were usual anomalies that twisted reality, the monstrous creatures that lurked in the shadows. Even the omnipresent hum of ambient magic seemed muted. Just emptiness. The lack of danger was almost more unsettling than the usual chaos of the expanse. Kyle found himself jumping at shadows that weren't there, his nerves frayed by the unnatural calm. As they trudged through the eerie calm, a few cadets began to whisper among themselves, their voices barely audible above the sounds of their footsteps.
"This is right,"
muttered Liera, her amber eyes darting nervously from side to side.
"The expanse is never this quiet. It's like the calm before a storm."
Her slender figure was tense, muscles coiled beneath her uniform, as if ready to spring into action at any moment. Liera's long, dark hair was pulled back into a tight braid, revealing high cheekbones and a determined set to her jaw. Despite her evident unease, there was a fierce intelligence in her gaze, hinting at a sharp mind constantly analyzing their surroundings. As she spoke, her hand unconsciously brushed the hilt of her weapon, a gesture that betrayed both her training and her apprehension about their natural calm enveloping them. Eric, a stocky cadet with a usually jovial demeanor, nodded in agreement. "I've got a bad feeling about this. Maybe we should turn back?"
"Are you crazy?"
hissed Mons, his lean frame toned with tension.
"And face Dean's wrath? We can't go back empty-handed."
Their hushed conversation was suddenly interrupted by Johann's sharp voice.
"Enough chatter!"
he snapped, his steely gaze silencing the cadets immediately.
"Your job isn't to question. It is to follow orders. Now, eyes forward and stay alert."
The cadets fell silent, exchanging uneasy glances. Kyle, overhearing the exchange, felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The unnatural stillness of the expanse pressed in around them, a foreboding reminder that in this realm, even peace could be a harbinger of danger. Suddenly, Johann's scanning device erupted in a series of sharp, insistent beeps. His eyes widened as he studied the readout.
It's unprecedented,"
he breathed, a hint of greed creeping into his voice.
"A potentially huge deposit. This could change everything."
The cadets yet again exchanged uneasy glances. The crumbs of Nexite they found so far meant nothing to their Dean, but this? This could not only meet their quota, but exceeded beyond their wildest dreams. Johann's eyes gleamed with barely contained excitement.
"We have to check it out, at any cost,"
he declared. The huge resonance the equipment had detected could mean more than just meeting their quota. It could mean a promotion for Johann, a fact not lost on the ambitious instructor. As they changed course to investigate the reading, Kyle couldn't shake a feeling of unease. The expanse had told them that nothing came without a price. What would be the cost of this discovery? And were they prepared to pay it? As they started approaching the location of the supposed next light deposit, the air began to shimmer subtly, like heat waves rising from sun-baked earth. The lead cadet, a tall youth named Darius, suddenly stopped in his tracks. His eyes went wide, and a look of wonder spread across his face. "It's beautiful," Darius whispered, his voice filled with awe. Without warning, he took a stumbling step forward, then another, his movements becoming more erratic with each passing second. Johan's eyes narrowed.
Darius!
He barked,
Stand down!
but the cadet seemed beyond hearing. With a curse, Johan sprinted forward, crossing the invisible threshold. The moment he did, he found himself enveloped in a thick, milky fog. The world around him vanished, replaced by an impenetrable white mist that seemed to swallow all sound and light. Gritting his teeth against the disordering effect, Johan grabbed what he hoped was Darius' collar and forcefully dragged him back. As they stumbled back across the barrier, Johan's face was grim.
It's the mist of the expanse,
He announced, his voice tight with tension.
We've wandered right into it.
A collective gasp went up from the cadets. They had all heard about the mist during their briefings, a phenomenon as beautiful as it was deadly. This swirling ethereal fog was known to house incredibly strong psionic fields that could shatter Mage's mental shields in minutes.
Sir,
Eliza spoke up, her voice trembling slightly.
we should turn back. The mists are too dangerous.
Orin nodded vigorously.
She is right. We are not equipped to handle this.
But Johan's eyes had taken on a feverish gleam. The promise of the Naxalite deposit so close seemed to have overpowered his usual caution. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small case.
Not equipped. You are Iron Dominion cadets,
He said, his voice taking on a manic edge.
We don't turn back.
He opened the case, revealing rows of small, iridescent balls.
Mind protection pills.
Johan announced.
A product of fine magical craftsmanship. Take one, each of you.
Kyle felt his heart sink as Johan began distributing the medicine. The instructor's greed was palpable, overriding all common sense. As Kyle reluctantly took the offered pill, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to make a terrible mistake.
Swallow them,
Johan commanded, his eyes sweeping over the group.
We are going in. The Naxalite and glory await us in the mists.
With growing dread, Kyle watched as his fellow cadets complied one by one. The shimmering barrier of the mists loomed before them, beautiful and terrifying. As they prepared to step into the unknown, Kyle silently prayed that the price of their ambition wouldn't be too high.
Enjoying the video so far? Support us with a quick thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to stay tuned.
As cadets stepped through the shimmering barrier, they were immediately engulfed by the thick, milky fog of the mists. The world as they knew it vanished, replaced by an unfurled landscape that defied comprehension. Myriads of lights danced around them, a mesmerizing display of color and movement. Some dotted about like fireflies in midsummer's night, while others hung suspendedly with an otherworldly rhythm. Streams of luminescence twisted and merged, forming intricate patterns before dissolving into nothingness. The air itself seemed alive with sound, haunting melodies interviewed with whispered promises, creating a cacophony that was both beautiful and terrifying. Some lights hummed with a gentle, alluring tone, while others emitted discordant screeches that set teeth on edge. Voices called out, offering secrets, pleading for help, or weaving elaborate lies. These sensations weren't just external. They seemed to penetrate to the very core of the cadets' beings. Each light, each sound, reached into the deepest recesses of their minds, probing and tempting. Kyle felt his temples burning, a sensation of intense pressure building behind his eyes. The mind protection pills seemed to be working, keeping them from becoming completely lost in the overwhelming sensory assault, but at cost. A dull, throbbing ache began to spread through his skull, the beginnings of a migraine that threatened to split his head into two. Around him, he could see his fellow cadets struggling with similar discomfort. Oren, usually so jovial, now wore a grimace of pain, his eyes squeezed shut against the onslaught. Elia swayed on her feet, her hands pressed against her ears as if trying to block out the maddening chorus of voices. As the minutes ticked by, Kyle noticed a change coming over the group. Their movements became erratic, their focus wavering. Whether it was the side effect of the pills, or the influence of the mists themselves, their usual composure began to crumble. Vance, typically cautious and reserved, suddenly laughed out loud, a manic catch to his voice as he reached out to touch one of the passing lads. Darius, still dazed from his earlier encounter, began to wander off, muttering incoherently about hidden truth and cosmic secrets. Even Johan, their stern leader, seemed affected. His eyes darted about widely, following the dance of lights with an almost predatory intensity.
Keep moving!
He balked, his voice harsher than usual.
The next light is close. I can feel it.
As they pressed deeper into the mists, Kyle felt his own grip on reality starting to slip. The light seemed to whisper directly to him now, promising power, knowledge, and things beyond his wildest dreams. It took every ounce of his willpower to remember their mission and the dangers that lurked in this beautiful, terrifying realm. With each step, the cadets moved further from safety and deeper into the heart of the mists, their behavior growing more reckless and unpredictable. The expanse had drawn them in, and now it seemed determined to unmake them, one sensory overload at a time.
We are close,
Johan announced, his voice tight with anticipation.
The readings are off the charts. It's just ahead, through this mist.
The cadets moved forward cautiously, the eerie silence broken only by the soft beeping of Johan's device. Kyle felt a chill run down his spine, an inexplicable sense of dread growing with each step. Suddenly, Johan's device erupted in a series of sharp, insistent beeps. The harsh sound cut through the eternal hum of the mists, jolting the cadets from their trance-like state.
There!
Johan shouted, his voice hoarse with excitement.
It's just ahead! Move now!
Galvanized by their leader's urgency, the cadets surged forward. Their movements were clumsy, uncoordinated, as they struggled against the lingering effects of the mist and the mind-altering pills. Kyle stumbled after his comrades, his head pounding, every step an effort of will. They pushed through the thick fog, John's device growing louder with each passing moment. Then, as suddenly as they had entered it, the mist fell away. The milky whiteness dissolved, revealing a new environment that was a harsh contrast to their feral realm they'd just left. They found themselves in a vast, dimly lit cavern. Massive stalactites hung from the ceiling like petrified things, casting long shadows in the gloom. The air was heavy with a scent of damp stone and something else, a musky, animal odor that set Kyle's nerves on edge. As their eyes adjusted to the darkness, Kyle realized with a growing horror that the ground beneath their feet was littered with bones. Some were old and bleached, others disturbingly fresh. The cavern floor was uneven, riddled with strange depressions that looked unsettlingly like massive footprints. Johann, still fixated on his beeping device, seemed oblivious to their ominous surroundings.
We're here.
He breathed, his eyes gleaming with an almost feverish light.
The Nexalite deposit. It must be immense.
But before anyone could respond, a low, guttural growl resonated through the cavern. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once, reverberating over stone walls and sending chills down their spines. As the growl faded into an oppressive silence, Kyle felt a sickening realization wash over him. They had indeed found what they were looking for, a massive Nexalite deposit, judging by Johann's ecstatic reaction to the scanner. They had stumbled into something far more dangerous. This wasn't just a rich vein of a prosperous mineral. It was also a predator's lair. The beast had likely been drawn to the same energy that had led them here, making this cavern its deadly domain, feeding on this almost everlasting ocean of pure mana and getting stronger. At this moment, an overwhelming darkness engulfed them. Blacker than the darkest night, it wasn't just an absence of light. It was as if the darkness itself was a living, malevolent entity.
Defensive positions!
Johann's shout was muffled, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Chaos erupted. The sound of rending flesh and agonized screams filled the air. Something massive moved through their ranks, striking with terrifying speed and precision. Kyle could hear his comrades falling one by one, their cries cut shortly by the unseen predator. In the pitch-black void, Kyle stumbled blindly, his heart pounding in his chest. His hands trembled as he reached for the assigned weapon, a standard-issue arcane pulsar. This slick pistol-like device was cool to the touch, its rune-edged barrel glowing faintly with stored magical energy. The pulsar was a true marvel of magic engineering, except its only flaw, or, better to say, feature. The weapon's effectiveness was directly tied to the user's magical prowess. For Kyle, with his weak seed, the weapon had always been frustratingly unreliable, often sputtering out weak sparks instead of the intended blasts. He knew that even if he could see his target, the pulsar would likely be ineffective against such a formidable foe. Worse still, in this pitch-black environment, risks hurting his comrades more than the beast. The thought of accidentally striking one of his fellow cadets with even a weak blast sent a shudder through him. As Kyle gripped the familiar hand over the pulsar, he realized it offered little comfort to his desperate situation. He needed to find another way to survive and help his squad. Then, amidst the consuming darkness, Kyle saw it. A faint, pulsing glow. The Nexalite crystal, somehow visible despite the magical darkness. Its soft luminescence was like a beacon of the chaos, drawing Kyle towards it. As he moved, he could hear the beast moving around him, its heavy breathing and the sound of its claws scraping against the stone. The creature was toying with them, picking them off one by one in the darkness. As Kyle's fingers closed around the Nexalite crystal, an unexpected sensation coursed through him. The crystal pulsed with warmth, sending tingling waves of energy up his arm. It was as the Nexalite resonated with something deep within him, awakening a sense he never knew he had. The glow intensified, pushing back the darkness in a small sphere around him. In that faint light, Kyle caught glimpses of the horror surrounding them. Bodies of his fallen comrades lay strewn across the ground, and there, at the edge of the light, he saw a flash of scales, a glimpse of razor-sharp claws, and eyes that reflected the crystal's glow with predatory hunger. As the creature's eyes locked onto Kyle, a surge of intuition flooded his mind. The energy flowing from the crystal felt more potent, more controllable than anything he had experienced with his weak seed. In that moment of clarity, Kyle understood that the Naxalite crystal in his hand was now both his only weapon and his only hope for survival. The realization wasn't just mental, but visceral. The crystal's power hummed in harmony with his own meager magical abilities, amplifying them in a way he'd never felt before. It was as if the Naxalite was offering him a chance, a dangerous, unknown, but potentially life-saving chance. With a beast circling and the cries of surviving cadets echoing in the magical darkness, Kyle knew that his next actions would determine not just his fate, but the fate of anyone left alive in this killing field.
Curious about what's next? Subscribe now to find out first.